Hey guys, I'm learning TFT. In this video, I'm going to go through an early game analysis of patch 13.3. We're going to go through MetaTFT's stats on early game, what I'm calling unit packs, packs of 4 units that really help you define your early game, how those 4 unit packs perform in stage 2, how you might itemize them, what direction they push you down, what additional units you can add to level 5, level 6, and the ultimate endgame comps that they lead to that are meta and have the best performance. So this analysis will help us gain a better picture of how to play the early game, help us transition better into the mid game to prepare us for a strong late game. Before I jump in, I'm going to go through some early game quotes related to why this analysis is important. If you would like to go straight to the analysis, feel free to take a look at the description. There'll be a link and timestamps to different parts of the video. So I talked about these first 2 quotes last time in my previous early game analysis, but I do want to cover it again because it's really important. These are both chess players. Bobby Fischer said, "By the time the opening is over, you should already know your middle game plan." And Lajos Portish said, "The purpose of the opening is not to win the game, but to create a playable middle game." So the idea here is that you don't need to always full streak in stage 2 and 3, but you need to figure out how to preserve HP, slam items that can help you kill units, be able to transition into a mid game and late game plan that makes sense, that is clear to you, so that you're not too dizzy and or too low HP to play the mid game. And Plato, the philosopher, said the beginning is the most important part of the work. If you set up your early game well, then you lay a strong foundation for your mid and end game. Aristotle said something similar. He said, "Well begun is half done." And Garry Kasparov, one of the great chess players of all time, said, "In chess as in life, the strong positions are the ones that keep you calm." And this has an interesting psychological edge to it in that it can be easy to end up in a very dizzying spot in the mid game if your early game is not well planned and you have a systematic process to think about how you transition your item holders in the early game to the mid game and how you might want to create end game boards around that early game. Of course, you do want to slam items and not always greed BIS, but having a rough roadmap and understanding of how the different early game units fit together so that you can transition into the mid game can help you stay calm, which at the end of the day allows you to make more optimal, rational decisions. Because when you aren't calm and you are in an anxious state, you are much more likely to make mistakes and play suboptimally. So with that said, we can jump into the analysis. One thing I want to say is that I've included a lot of stats here, which are basically this is off of MetaTFT's early game analysis, which if you want to look at this data, it's only available in their actual downloaded desktop app. It's not available on their website, but they have win rate, round win rate by stage, average final placement, and the play rate. So I did this for stage 2 to really focus on the early game. So this 49% is the win rate, 4.3 is the final placement, and 0.3 is the play rate. And I organized these tiers primarily around the final placement so that it gives us an understanding of the direction that this pack of units pushes us toward and why it might average better than other lines or packs that you might play in the early game. So I'm not going to go through all the packs, but maybe most of the A and B ones we can go through. So we'll start with Steb, Lux, Zyra, and Trundle. This bottom area, by the way, is not organized by positioning. So this is not how you want to optimally position the board. The way I structured it is by putting trait related units on kind of the same vertical. So for example, this is all bruisers here. These are scrap units. These are sorcerers. So it gives you an understanding of, as you go to level 5 and 6, which units you want to hold. And the items here that are listed are the most commonly played items for that set of units. So this is Steb, Lux, Trundle, Zyra. Where is that? This one here. So you can see in the units and item section, Rageblade and Shojin are very common. Sterak's is as well, but the way they have this structured is it's not exactly this way. You can also play to experiment here, but I don't have it listed exactly that way because there's a separate one where Urgot is included, for example. But you can play this into like a Sterak's on Trundle angle into Urgot as well. But for the most part, this you can play with Shojin or Rageblade. And I have here listed the transitions. So this will also tell you for the next stage what is the most common. So like 18% of the time you'll add in a Vladimir. 15% of the time the next unit in is a Gangplank. And so from there you can click in this and then go to the next transition point and find that, okay, from this starting group, you are ending in like a 6 Conqueror board in that example. So here we can see that if you start with this board and you slam Rageblade, you can go towards a Twitch endgame board. So most likely that's going to look like something like this, where Zyro is your early game holder with Rageblade. And I've seen Dishso play this. You could do like a Rageblade, red buff. You can even slam IE on Zyra and just have her be your Corki item holder. Alternatively, you can slam Shojin and go towards a Sorcerer flex angle. So you can go towards like Swain Nami reroll. You can go towards Black Rose 6 Sorcerer Zoe carry. If you hit a Sorcerer emblem, then you can go towards 8 Sorcerer. So I'm just calling that Sork flex here, although these stats are for 8 Sork, so it's not exactly perfect analysis there. And then you can also play towards Black Rose Silco. So this line is very flexible, which is why I have it listed as both AP and AD, since with the Bruiser frontline, it plays naturally into Twitch. As you add in Nunu, you already have your Zyra, throw in Urgot. Urgot also pairs well with Gangplank, which gives you scrap with Trundle. So this line is very flexible. Also, this line, like any Zyra Lux line, I believe, well, I guess in this case, Zyra and Lux have very similar win rates. Lux a little bit higher here. But in the line that we just looked at, in the pack that we just looked at, Zyra with Rageblade is much better than Lux. Shojin, Lux is better. So I guess with Rageblade, Zyra is better. But if you have them both at 2-star, eventually in this line, if you're going to play Twitch, you would throw in Nunu and another experiment like Urgot, in which case the items on Zyra would be better. And the Black Rose Silco board is kind of same as last patch. So AP and AD actually, I'm just going to go over all the A's first. So no, AD Melee doesn't have any A ones. AP has some A's. These are Darius Lux, Vladimir. So basically, you'll notice that both of these are Zyra Lux backline. With the previous one was a Bruiser frontline. This one is a Watcher frontline. And you're itemizing your Zyra more traditionally down AP, because switching this Watcher frontline to AD is much more challenging, whereas this first Bruiser board is going to be much easier to flex into either Sorcerer side or the Twitch side. The play rate on this board is higher at 0.5 and has a higher win rate at 50% compared to the other one, but the average end placement is pretty similar. So this board can transition into Sorcerers, it can transition into Black Rose Silco, and also 4 Emissary Swain Nami reroll. Next, we have Darius Morgana. This is an early 3 Black Rose with 2 Watcher. The play rate's pretty low at 0.2 because it does require you to find Cassiopeia and Vladimir, which can be challenging. But this one, you're pretty naturally going to play towards a Black Rose Silco line. I didn't even put that in here because it's kind of obvious. You already have the clear foundation and direction. You can also play this towards a Sorc Flex, mainly Sorcerer, like a 3 Black Rose 6 Sorcerer board. So it is actually flexible between those 2 lines. But the basic idea is that you are going to play AP around a Black Rose core when you start with this opener. All right, AD, the highest average end placement and also the highest play rate at 0.7. So this is basically the best and most common opener that you can have in the game right now. So if we go by play rate, it's actually number 2 in play rate. Number 1 is actually for Conqueror, but you can see that the average placement is the highest with a very high play rate. So this board right here, if you can hit 2 stars across for all of this, wait, is that what this is? Yeah. If you can hit 2 stars for all of this, it's an extremely strong opener. You're next in, and what's better than Powder is if you can actually have the Zeri or Kog'Maw just to get 2 sniper. But the reason that this is so strong is because it plays towards Twitch Flex. Unless you have Bruiser Emblem, it would be with Bruiser Emblem, it would be Bruiser Mundo Twitch. If you don't have the emblem, it would look like this. You can also go Bronze for Life with a bunch of traits with Twitch. And this pack can also take you down a vertical enforcer. Since you already have Steb and Maddie, you can easily add in these enforcers. If you get an enforcer emblem, then you can go for the 8 enforcer late game. The challenge with 8 enforcer is, well, you do need an emblem to hit 8. You also need to find a Caitlyn. And so making sure that you have a strong early game can be pretty strong. The good thing is that this has a 50% win rate in the early game and transitions really well into the top meta comps right now. And I had this spreadsheet that I went over in my last video on how 13.3 comps are performing relative to the last patch. And you can see here that Bruiser, Twitch, and 8 Enforcer are 2 of the strongest, most commonly played comps right now. And so that's why this opening pack is so strong, is because it plays into 2 of the best meta lines. All right, from a melee perspective, this board is mainly if you're basically going for Nocturne reroll, which is primarily gated by artifacts right now, and a bunch of artifacts were nerfed in this latest patch. But if you can get Snipers, Focus, Fishbones, RFC, Prowlers, those can still be quite good for Nocturne reroll. And this opener has a 52% win rate and a 4.3 average placement. So that's the Nocturne reroll transition. It can actually play towards Zeri reroll if you slam a Rageblade on Nocturne. If you have a 2-star Amumu and then you have a Rageblade Nocturne with this board, it can actually streak, or at the very least preserve a lot of HP for you. And the moment you find Zeri, Kog'Maw, Blitzcrank, and these Watchers, because you have this Watcher opener and you very naturally would play the Watchers, you can then go into Zeri reroll. And Zeri reroll is basically looks like Zeri Kog'Maw, like a bunch of Watchers. You add in Echo later with the Scar. And if you do start with the Rage Blade and IE, then you could just move it over to Zeri. If you are slamming BT, then you are going down the Nocturne reroll artifact path. And if for some reason you don't have the artifact or you're contested, then you can also transition into 4 Emissary and Bessa. Because you are playing the Warden frontline and Quick Strikers, the Quick Strikers will naturally transition into Ambessa, and the Wardens will naturally add on to Garen. So that can be a natural transition, though this line really requires a lot of gold because you have 3 forecasts. You need a lot of items because you have a lot of possible carries, which basically you should be playing this primarily on encounters that give you a lot of gold items. And a lot of times you need to win streak. This is kind of similar to the Karma Fiora Gwen board from last patch, where it's extremely expensive and hard to hit. If you hit everything, it can have a pretty high cap, but most of the time you're not able to hit everything and you just die. Lost Streak is just Chem Baron. So that covers all of the A's, the primary A's. I'll start going into the B packs now. So this is Hybrid APAD, is an Academy opener. Academy is still quite solid in the meta. It AVP wise hasn't really changed. The pick rate went down. Jace was nerfed. Leona was buffed. The Jace Forge was nerfed. Ideally, you have a good Academy item to go down this route. Most likely, you're slamming Shojin Archangel or IE, and this will transition very naturally into this board plus Jace, ideally. And you can also use Rumble to replace Aurelia in the late game if you get him 2-star. And you can see that Lux can basically be an item holder for Heimerdinger. The Shojin can go on Jace in the late game. The IE on Ezreal would naturally transition towards Corki or Jace. And so you can play very flexibly down this line. That's the beauty of Academy. You get a lot of items from the Academy trait itself, and you are much more flexible in the item drops to play between an AP carry, an AD carry, and a frontline tank. You can also, if you get like a Rebel emblem, eventually play towards 7 Rebel as well. If you are primarily playing around Lux as an AP holder and no AD holder, you can transition into Black Rose Silco as a possibility, though because you're playing around Sentinel frontline, it can be challenging to pivot into that. Though if you put in Vladimir as your additional sorcerer with Lux, that could be a solid foundation to go towards that. You can also go vertical sorcerers as a transition as well. In the we didn't cover AD melee. Okay. In the AD melee packs, we have Darius, Draven, Rel Swain. This is the 4 Conqueror, which is the highest play rate in the early game at 0.8. Has a very good win rate in the early game, especially for Conquerors. You need to win streak in order to get a lot of the rewards. And if you're going to stick with vertical Conqueror, like 6 Conqueror in the late game, you need to stay ahead of tempo. You need to be streaking. You need to get the cash outs to snowball and stay ahead. So that usually means you're going to play around 2-star Darius, 2-star Draven. You can notice here that these items can lead into Twitch. I did not include that here. You can also put a BT on Darius, which could lead towards be an item holder for Ambessa in the 6 Conqueror line, or switch to 4 Emissary Ambessa. And you have all the pit fighters here to add in. At level 5, you can go down a Watcher angle, a Sentinel angle, or add in AP to Swain as well. Next, we have 4 Enforcer opener with Maddie as your primary carry. You can also have Camille as a carry and play towards Camille. This is also typically gated by an artifact. Camille AVP improved by 0.5 because there were a bunch of ambushers that got buffed. Pretty much all the ambushers got buffed, and Loris and Steb. It still averages a 4.6, so maybe that will improve as people learn to improve this line. But with artifacts, it's extremely strong. It's arguably stronger to play. Well, maybe not. Like it's roughly comparable with different items. So with Spectral Cutlass 3.2, Prowler 3.3, Silver Mirror was nerfed 3.7, and Infinity Force 4.2. So the Ambusher line is possible. The vertical 8 Enforcer line, if you can hit an Enforcer emblem, is very good. You can transition with Maddie towards a Twitch Flex board. You can also go towards Academy Sentinel. If you have AD, you can, because you already have the Loris, you can play in Sentinels and then gradually transition if you hit an Ezreal from your Maddie to your Ezreal in the mid game. And then you can go Camille reroll. And then we have Darius, Draven, Tristana, Urgot. This naturally leads to Urgot reroll. It can also lead to Tristana reroll, though that usually you want to play with like a Sentinel frontline or a Bruiser frontline, and then but with this opener you can transition. If you can stay ahead of tempo, you can use it to play into Tristana reroll with 4 Emissary. Most likely though, most commonly you're going to use this to go into Urgot, which means you want to add in 3 Experiment, add a Pit Fighter. You can also use this to go into 4 Conqueror. If you're really ahead, like you're full streaking early, you get a bunch of Conqueror stacks. You can add a Rel, a Swain, and then the Urgot items can eventually go onto Ambessa. So I'll also add that here. Okay. In the AP lines, we have a Bruiser front line with Ziggs, Powder, backline. You can also put Powder in the front line to just have her shield have more value and get the anti-heal cast off faster. Ziggs as your item holder, you want to scrap one of them depending on what your item components are. You can add in, if you get Gangplank in, then you can eventually add in another Pit Fighter. There's a bunch of Bruisers you can add on. You could also transition this into a Camille reroll since you already have the Steb, Trundle, Powder trio. And depending on how you itemize Ziggs, if you go down Shojin route, then you can lean towards, you can go towards Black Rose Silco. If you get like another Dominator like Blitzcrank. With Rageblade, you could go down towards a Bruiser Twitch route since you already have the Bruiser frontline. You can go towards Experiment Twitch. With IE, you can very naturally go towards Gangplank in the mid game and then Corki in the late game. So similar to the first Lux Zyra angle, you could just slam AD and play on an AP unit and just use him to tempo into the mid game when you find Gangplank. 6 scrap is also an option here. I think I mentioned that. All right, so that was typically going to be AP. Next in AP, we have a Rebel Vex opener, which can naturally lead to Academy Sentinel. We talked about that, where Vex would be the item holder for Heimerdinger. It easily transitions in because if you're playing Rebel, you can play towards Ezreal, and the front line for the Academy Sentinel is Sentinel, so you already have the Aurelia and Rel. So it could be a natural transition there. You can play this towards 7 Rebel, though 7 Rebel is hard to stabilize without a Jinx, especially if you don't have a Rebel emblem. So this is usually more gated by having a Rebel emblem. And even if you have a Rebel emblem and you don't hit Jinx, it can be very hard to stabilize in the late game. So 7 Rebel can be quite good if you can hit Jinx too. A lot of times you just have to really streak early game for that to make sense. And then Vex can also be an item holder for Black Rose Silco, though it can be a little bit of a challenging transition because there's not a lot of overlap in the units. All right, AP next we have a Sorcerer backline with a Sentinel frontline. So we've already seen a Sorc backline with Bruiser frontline, with Warden frontline. So this backline is just very flexible and strong. I don't think I actually updated this one. So this can go into Academy Sentinel is probably the most natural one because you are already playing the Lux. You can also play towards a Sorc flex angle, the Black Rose one, if you don't have a Sorc emblem. You can play towards 7 Rebel, Black Rose Silco. This averages a 4.5. Play rate is solid. So, and you can always, again, it's a more difficult transition, but you could move towards a Twitch angle if you're carrying the Zyra, and let's say you hit a early Nunu and a Urgot, then you can still go towards like Twitch if you slam a Rage Blade on Zyra. All right, so that covers the B tier for AP. Next, we have the ADB tier, which is a Bruiser frontline, Sniper backline, which very naturally leads to Twitch flex. You can also go towards 8 Enforcer by Caitlyn. This one is similar to, I think there was another one that was just Trundle Stead frontline with the Powder, but that one naturally leads into this one as well. And of course you can go towards Zeri reroll, though it's a little bit more challenging than the Watcher frontline since you have to switch from the Bruisers over to the Watchers. But yeah, anytime you're playing Maddie early game, it just naturally transitions into either Twitch Flex or Vi Caitlyn. All right, we have Watcher frontline with Draven and Violet. Usually Draven, you're going to slam Rageblade IE, which can go towards a Twitch Flex or Zeri angle. You can just use Draven to tempo towards a 6 Conqueror angle, and you can also go towards a 4 Emissary and Bessa with this pack. At the melee line, we have Camille. So Steb, Trundle, Powder, Camille with Ambushers. Pretty much if you go down this route, you're going Camille reroll. If for some reason you're contested, then you can go towards a 4 Emissary and Bessa line, but we already talked about how that can be challenging to hit and hard to cap out if you don't have a lot of items for all the units, even if you hit them. And then at Lost Streak, we have, this is just for Ken Baron. I didn't really put this analysis together because you just want to sack, and ideally you play a lot of backline units that can kill single units. So that covers the stage 2 pack analysis. And from that analysis, I created unit tier lists based off of what was most commonly in A and B to create a tier list. And so at the 1 cost, we have Steb Trundle as the best frontline in the early game, with Maddie and Zyra as the best backline carries. And you can see that they both, Maddie naturally transitions into the Enforcer line, the Twitch line. Zyra can be flexible between playing Sorcerers as well as Twitch. And Darius in the front line, you can play towards Conquerors and can be useful, flexible for Watchers to play with Zeri reroll. You can tempo with Conquerors. You can play towards If you hit a Vladimir, you can use for Black Rose Flex. There's even a Darius reroll board with sorcerers.
Black Roses by Cuddy Moo, now playing on Spotify.
Oh, my Siri got triggered. So Darius, very flexible. Draven and Lux. Lux pairs very well with Zyra. Draven pairs well with Darius. And Draven, from an AD standpoint, there's only Maddie and AD and Draven. And because Twitch is so strong, these are going to be your two main AD item holders with Rageblade, and Zyra can also hold Rageblade. At the B tier, we have Amumu and Aurelia. They showed up a little bit, and then these units rarely showed up in any of the A and B tiers. So that covers the 2 costs, and then, or 1 cost, and then at the 2 costs, we have Rel, Urgot, Vladimir, Zeri. Rel, with 3 traits, is extremely flexible. Conqueror can be strong early game. Sentinels, there's a lot of different lines that can go down. Academy Sentinel. You could do Tristana Sentinel reroll. You could, and then with Visionary too. It's just very flexible. Urgot reroll is very strong. You use Urgot in the Twitch experiment board, so very good. Can also be used as an item holder for Mbessa. Vladimir with his 3 traits also strong. Because Sorceress is very strong right now, Vladimir is going to be strong. It's also useful for the Watcher frontline with Zeri reroll. And Zeri, because if Maddie's going to be first tier, then Zeri is going to be your second sniper in usually. And it still opens up the Zeri reroll line. If you hit anger issues with Zeri, it's extremely broken. So yeah, these 4 are all good. With Academy Sentinel being strong, Leona, if you can get 3 Academy in early game, this just goes to S tier. Camille reroll can be quite good. Enforcers is good, so Camille's here. Set, because the Bruisers are already going to be in the S tier, then Set is the only 2 cost Bruiser, so if you can get 4 Bruiser in at like 3-2, that can be quite a strong frontline. And Tristana with Urgot is good. Actually, Tristana could probably just go up here, like it's just very good as next in for any unit. Actually, I'm going to move that right now. Yeah, just Emissary anytime you need an extra unit is very good. And there's a Tristana reroll angle. There's the Urgot reroll. So Tristana, very good. Ziggs was nerfed in this patch, so not quite as strong as before. The Silco Dominator lines, like, just okay. You can see here where's Silco. The pick rate went down, the AVP is about the same. Scrap did get improved, AVP went up by 0.3, but usually when you play Scrap, you're playing around Corki, so Ziggs doesn't really benefit that much from AD. And then we have Nocturne Akali. Unless you get an artifact, Nocturne's not great. Vander you can play with the Zeri reroll board, but outside of that, you're not usually playing a Watcher frontline too much. And then Renata, the Renata reroll board was nerfed, Chem Baron was nerfed, so not great unless you hit like an early 3 Chem Baron with an emblem. Visionary is not very common unless you're playing Academy Sentinel, in which case usually you're only playing 2 Visionary. So that covers the whole analysis on early game units. Hopefully this will give you a better understanding of what the middle game plan is. By understanding this opening plan will help you create a more playable mid game and will help you remain calmer because you have a better understanding of how to transition from your early game into your mid game. If you have additional comments, questions, thoughts, I would love to hear your thoughts in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.